Never talk to police without your lawyer being present. Here's why. Imagine you just had a wonderful date with your boyfriend. You hang out for several hours, you grab dinner together, and then at the very end of the night, you drive together to the gas station for some late night snacks and some cigarettes. You kiss each other goodnight, and then you plan to see each other the very next day, except that day never comes. Your boyfriend, who you had literally just seen, was death in his home, which was then set on fire by an unknown assailant. And then to make things worse, unbeknownst to you, you are the police's #1 suspect. In an effort to be as helpful as possible to aid in the police's search for your boyfriend's killer, you provide as much information as you possibly can to help the case. However, instead, the police and the detectives do everything in their power to trick you, and then they wrongly sentence you to life in prison. This is exactly what happened to my Aunt Kylleen, and this is her incredible story that would eventually lead to her release from a federal prison for a crime that she did not commit.
Okay, so we're probably not going to get that far today, do you think?
Maybe, yeah, because it's a long story, or
a long story.
It is, yeah. I read the book that your lawyer had written.
Oh, you read the Death Row, the Angel of Death Row?
Yeah, and it was just so interesting. It was so compelling, but it was funny reading it because she did all the quotes, and I would like read them in your voice. Like she had it so down to just like everyone's personalities, and especially with like even your guys's family. Like it was just so funny. Like the things that she put in there, it was like, oh, it sounds so much like them.
Yeah, the library book reading when that first came out, it was quite interesting. You know, she introduced me as Deidre.
Oh, I know. Yeah. At first I read it and I was like, who is this? Who's Deirdre? I don't care about her story.
Should we have started at the beginning?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start. Yeah, we can start at the beginning. I know it's such a long story. So
and there's lots of cooks and nannies. So.
Right. Lots of, nooks and crannies. Let's take it a little bit back. Let's start with like young Kylleen. And I know my mom was born in Michigan. Were you born?
Yes, we were all born in Michigan.
Okay.
There were 8 children. My dad was a purchasing agent. My mom, back when I was a little, stayed at home. I was 5th out of 8. So we all went to Catholic school our whole life. All my growing up years, and then I went to an all-girls Catholic school as a teenager, high school, and basically we had a home in Canada that my mom and dad built, and we spent summers up there, and I had just a normal upbringing. It was, just I don't even know how to say it. Just, I just every day, like you.
Yeah.
Nothing abnormal in our lives. It was just a big family, lots of kids. My oldest brother left and went to the Marines and, got married and never returned. And that was when I was about 7. So we really all didn't live together at the same time. There were 8 of us. So there were pretty much 2 years in between each of us kids. So, my dad was a great provider. We didn't have a lot, but we never wanted for anything. They did what they could to give us the best life. And plus we had the lake that we went up to and swam and we still are all very close. So later on you'll find out just how close. There was a lot of different things would happen, and our family would all get together. My brother, my second oldest brother, got his hand caught in a machine when he was 18, lost 3 fingers. And that was, to me, the most traumatic thing that had ever happened in our lives. It was quite traumatic for me. And it was our family came together and, got us through. We moved from Detroit to Bloomfield Hills when I was 12. I went to 2 years of public school in Bloomfield Hills. So, it changed my view of things. I was in love with the Beatles. I heard that. I went to the Beatles concert in 1963. So I was 12 years old. I was so in love with them. Yeah.
Where was that concert?
It was downtown Detroit at
Oh,
Olympia
nice.
Stadium. Yeah. So my mom, we were at the lake during the summer. So my mom drove me to the concert and stayed outside, stood out there waiting for me during
Really?
the concert. Yes.
Oh god.
So, and 2 hour drive to get there and a 2 hour drive back. But I was like floating on heaven.
Yeah.
I was floating on clouds when I got out of there. I couldn't.
That's awesome.
Yeah, really is awesome. I had a really pretty good childhood.
Just want to pinpoint. So you guys were always close. You guys were always a super tight knit family, everyone.
Always close.
Okay. And you guys still are very close.
Yeah.
So I know this happened to a boyfriend of yours. So where did you meet?
Call him Pete, just because.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll call him Pete. Yeah.
So I met him. I worked in a dental office, and he was married to this girl that I worked with. It was just an odd situation. I was dating someone who, this is very hard to understand and very hard to explain. I was dating a guy who wanted to be a police officer. He would dress like a policeman. When I met him, I thought he was a policeman. He told me he was a policeman on leave for a medical problem. And when I was working for this dentist, he would go out in surveillance. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he surveilled her and he spied on her and found out she was having an affair with her next door neighbor. So this was a big, big thing. Finally, they divorced. Wife divorced, and she moved away with the new husband. He left his wife and 3 children next door. Okay. They lived next door to Pete.
Right. Okay. But then once they separated, so her and then the new husband moved away, and then
her new husband moved away, and Pete was on. But I had met him through her, and I knew he was really a nice guy. He would send her to work these beautiful lunches that he made, just, he was really a really kind person.
Yeah.
And I knew that about him, and I knew that she had, just not done a good thing to him. I felt bad for him. Yeah. So it was in March, and I was home. I was making some donuts. I was trying to make donuts, and he called me on the phone, and he asked me to go out with him. And I, of course, said, no, I can't go out with you. You're married to my friend, and that wouldn't be right. Well, he kept calling me and finally wore me down until finally I agreed to meet him for coffee. And I thought, well, that would just be it. I'm not gonna continue in this way, because it's just not acceptable. I didn't feel like it was acceptable to do that.
Yeah.
Because I was still working with her.
Right. And would she be open to the idea, you think?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. Off the table. Yeah.
No, she would not have been open to the idea at all. She was, not, she was my friend before. We had gone out together, her and I, different things. And I just knew that would not sit well with her. So we kept it, I didn't say anything about meeting him for coffee, but after we did that, we decided that we would go out on another date after that. So we started dating, and we didn't tell her. We never said anything about it. Finally, it had to be down the road just a little bit. They were driving by and saw my car in the driveway. So they called him up, and they called Pete up and started to ridicule him and say bad things about me and blah, blah, blah.
Is they your friend? Sorry. They who were calling him,
that wife and the next door neighbor had come to see his children and saw the car. So when she found out I was dating him, that was it. She was just, she couldn't believe it. And she was angry at him, and she called with terrible phone calls and called him all kinds of names. So it was not a good situation.
Yeah.
Later on, she quit where we worked, so we didn't work together anymore. And I didn't see her very much. I broke up with the other guy, the guy that was surveilling her. I broke up with him.
Yeah.
It turned out that he was not a policeman like I thought. Knew a policeman in a nearby city, and he called me up and said, "This guy's not a policeman.
Oh, wow.
He went to that little town, and he was a marksman. He taught gun classes to the whole police force in this little city. They thought he was a policeman. When they found out, they told him he couldn't come back to that city anymore. And if they saw him lurking around or trying to get back into their police department, he would be arrested for, impersonating a police officer. So there was a lot of animosity between him and this sergeant that worked there. So
okay. And what was his deal? He just was obsessed with the thought of being one.
He was obsessed with being a policeman, and he took classes. He was a marksman. He took classes in knives. He took classes in EMT. He was an EMT. But he was a pathological liar.
Yeah.
So of the things that he told me when we were together, I don't really know how much of it was really true. He had a whole closet full of police uniforms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he carried a gun. He carried handcuffs.
Yeah.
On his person. So, and it's creepy now when you think about it. It's creepy to know that this guy really wasn't a police officer. So when I found out, when this sergeant called me up and said, "This guy is not a policeman," then he was up north with my son hunting. And I took all of his things. We were living together at the time. I took all of his things and I packed them up and put them on my back deck. And I went with my other son and I went to stay with my sister. Then the day that they said they were coming home, I met him outside and I said, "What the things that you've told me are not true. I want you to leave now." And he left and went on his own. Well, then he proceeded to stalk me. So I would see him at my work. I would see him in the neighborhood, down the street, watching my house. I would see him. I went bowling. I would see him driving through the bowling lot, parking lot. He would talk to my friends. He was in my neighborhood. I would be coming home. So when I first started dating Pete, we were driving home to my house, and I see this stalker.
Yeah.
Down parked on a side street. So already there's several different things going on in my life that was just crazy, that not out of the ordinary, not like, all this drama that I couldn't even believe.
And were you able to call the police on him at all, or was that not really an option back then?
I knew enough about police procedure, so he never crossed a line.
Oh, wow.
One day I was at work and he came and put sugar in my gas tank. See him? I didn't know he was there. I just came out to my car and I saw all this sugar down below my gas tank. So, it was just, freaking me out. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to, it was just craziness. Another time I was going to go up to the lake and I went to get gas and my gas tank was super glued shut. I couldn't open it. I couldn't get gas. To me, he wanted me to be stranded somewhere. He wanted me to be driving and stranded. But I was kind of diligent about watching my car, and they didn't have Ring doorbells back in the day, but that would have come in handy.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it was so different back then too. Even stalking laws, I feel like they've evolved since just over the years, but even back then
there wasn't. He hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't done anything to hurt me. He hadn't threatened me outright. He did under the guise of, "How are you? I've been thinking about you," that kind of stuff. So it was creepy and it was scary as a single mom,
Definitely.
So he had some problems of his own. Okay. So finding out later on, I thought he had an alcohol problem because he drank a lot.
How old were you guys at this point? Sorry. How old were you at this point?
I am just about ready to turn 40.
Okay.
39. And
Okay.
he was, geez, I don't remember how old he was. Probably in his 40s.
Okay.
So I lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry. He was drinking a lot and you were starting to notice.
He was drinking a lot. His wife had told me that he was a Vietnam vet and got onto drugs when he was over there.
Okay.
I didn't see any evidence of drug use, but he was a heavy, heavy drinker. And when I started to think about it, I just really didn't want a heavy drinker to be around my kids. We went up to the lake. We took him up there. I took him up there when the kids were away one weekend, and he bought a 40-ounce bottle of liquor. Okay, which you buy at the border when you're going over duty free.
Yes.
And so we're up there. He drank the whole bottle, basically, while we were up there. And one day he was so drunk he passed out on my grandmother's porch, and my mother came. This was before we broke up. My mother came to me and she goes, "I hope you're not thinking of marrying this man because he has a definite drinking problem."
Mm-hmm.
So that's what led up to me breaking up with him. So after a few months, about 3 months, I broke it off. And I told him, it's just, I don't want to be involved with somebody who drinks that much. He was kind and nice, but when he was drinking, it was a different story. Mm-hmm. So just, red flags came out and I decided to break up the relationship. So this was in the middle of summer and I spent probably, I don't know, a month, maybe a little longer apart from him, dating other people. I was, my kids would go away for weekends to be there with their dad. Their dad and I split up probably in 1985. We got divorced. So my kids went to wherever their dad was and stayed with him for weeks on weekends and sometimes weeks at a time. So as we had broken up, then people shows up on my doorstep. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of guy he was. He painted my house while we were broke up.
Oh, yeah.
So he was over there doing stuff for me. He was a handyman. But I took the kids to my brother's house for a barbecue and I came back and there he was painting my house. Aww. Because we talked about it. So that's how he was. He was just a really, really nice guy.
Yeah.
And he came over one Sunday and he said he just really, really wanted to be friends. So if we could still be friends together. And I decided that would be okay because he was really a nice guy and good to have around. And when he wasn't drinking, he was a good person. So,
yeah. And when he would drink, was it anything just like you didn't get angry or anything like that? It was just so you could notice.
Well, I'll kind of explain a little bit more about that later because it comes into play later on. I just was too naive and didn't know what was going on. Okay. Finding out later, he was a heroin addict. Mm. And when we went to Canada, he couldn't get heroin. And so that's why he drank all the liquor. So to kind of even out a little bit. However, it just put him basically in a stupor. Yeah. So, I really wasn't aware that happened. I didn't understand at the time because I didn't know anything about heroin addicts or what they did or how, but so this was another big thing. Another big part of this whole story was that he was a heroin addict and I wasn't aware of it. Mm-hmm. So we got back together after he wanted to be friends. Being friends, I was never very good at that. So eventually we got back together. And he promised he would stop drinking. Oh, I didn't know.
I promise.
Oh yeah. Well, I was stupid and naive. I had no idea.
No.
So we get back together, and we're, this is in the fall. We dated for a couple weeks. My birthday comes up in October the 9th. He sent me a dozen roses to my office. He takes me out to a Luther Vandross concert, out to dinner with neighbors of his. It was the best birthday I ever had, basically. It was really, really nice.
Yeah.
And his, the neighbors were thinking, well, when are you guys going to get married? Blah, blah, blah. And it was just kind of like, we would just like, it was something we laughed off at the time. But later on, a couple days later, we actually did start talking about it, because we both had big houses to support. I had kids to support. Having two houses, it would economically, I had no insurance. He had, good insurance because he was a long-time employee. He held a job for 27 years at Ford Motor Company. So,
oh, wow.
But everybody had the same opinion of him from our weekend at the lake was, you don't need to be around this guy. He drinks way too much. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, so then that's when I broke up with him. But after we got back together, he stopped drinking. He was, doing pretty good, but there was just still some red flags going up. It was, I could overlook some stuff. The whole thing with his wife, his ex-wife, that was not settling, that was not good. I still had the stalker. So basically the day after my birthday, we had gone out that night. The day after my birthday, I went over to Pete's. My kids were home. I bought them a pizza and I went over. They were at this point 12 and 15. So they could stay by themselves for a while. I went over to Pete's house. When I got there, well, first of all, before I went to Pete's, I had just started to get some therapy. I started to see a psychiatrist, for some things that had happened to me as a child, dealing with, some things that, made it hard for me to have a relationship. So I was trying to work through some of these things, and Pete was aware that I was going, and he thought it was a good idea. And, because I had been through my marriage, I had, had several boyfriends. It just was, my relationships weren't stable. I could never, settle down and be happy in a relationship with someone. And so I had just started this therapy with this doctor. And so I went to see her. The parking lot was very dark. It was late at night. It was probably, I want to say a 6 o'clock appointment in October, 6 o'clock at night, starting to get dark here. So when I came out of the appointment, the parking lot was empty and it was kind of scary. I remember thinking, this is scary. I kind of walked quickly to my car. I got in and shut the door and realized I broke my nail off. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a big acrylic nail buff. So it had broken off, and I kept it and I put it on the seat of my car, and I thought I would glue it when I got home.
Yeah. That's a good nail.
Yeah.
Perfectly good nail.
I did my own nails back then. So it was like a big deal to me. It was nothing to fix it. So I kept it.
Yeah.
So I get home. I went to Pete's house, and it was already like 7:30. So I walked in his house. He opened the garage. I had his garage door opener, right? He gave me a garage door opener for his house. So,
which is normal.
Yeah. Which
that's super normal.
So I could get in. He also had a guy that lived with him, who had a garage door opener. This is another thing. This kid that he lived with was someone that he knew, who ended up being a crack addict, and he asked him to leave, but the guy left with his garage door opener. And Pete and I went over to his house to try to get the garage door opener, and the guy wasn't home, and so we never got it. But I knew right where he lived. I could find the house. So I get over to his house. I open the garage. I park in the garage. I close the garage door. I go upstairs. Pete's asleep.
Yeah,
he's asleep. He wakes up when he hears me coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So I go in. We stayed up in his bedroom. He had gotten a bonus that day from work and had gotten some money. We talked. We were talking about Thanksgiving coming up, about spending it with him and his family, and his mom was kind of angry that we had broken up. He was not sure that she'd receive me well because we had broken up, and she the way he explained it was that she was worried about him and didn't want us to get back together because I had asked him, I ended the relationship. So
and was he pretty close with his family? Like, were they
close with his also?
Okay.
We sat and talked. We were just laid around in his bed. We both smoked at the time. We were both smoking. We were just talking, watching QVC. He watched QVC all the time. So I know. So I get a call from my son, and he told me that he had been kicked out.
Oh, wow.
My youngest. So he was 12, and he was just in middle school, and he was kind of rambunctious, and his teacher said that he couldn't come back unless I came back with him in the morning and talked to the counselor. So I said, okay, I would do that. And we ended the call, and I told Pete that, I couldn't stay too late because I had to get up and go to the school with my son. So left. This is a bone of contention because I didn't really remember what time it was. So I could never really put my finger on exactly what time I left. But when he asked me if I would take some money and pay his electric bill the next day because it was close to where I worked. So into the closet, got some money and gave it to me with the bill. And then he asked me to drive him to the gas station to get some cigarettes. So I drove him to the gas station, which is probably less than a mile away. Drove him back to his house. I pulled into the driveway. He had spent some of the money that he gave me on the cigarettes because they were having a sale on cigarettes.
Nice.
So he wanted to cash in on that sale. So he needed to replace, I think, a 20 or something. So he went back into the house, and he came out with money and gave it to me and kissed me 4 or 5 times. So this is kind of one of the things that comes up later, because the policeman wrote down that I said he kissed me 45 times.
You're like, what?
It was 4 or 5.
45 exactly.
45 exactly. No.
Yeah.
So we said goodnight, and I went to my house, and my kids were in bed. This was probably midnight when I got back to his house finally and left. I drove, it was like 2.7 miles to my house. And I went over the train tracks to my house. I got home. I repaired my nail. I went into the bedroom. I called and talked to Pete on the phone. We talked for a few minutes, and everything was fine. Everything was. The next morning, he called me every morning before I went to work. So we'd talk on the phone before, but this was real early because I had to take my son into the school. So I called him, but his line was busy. I called him when I got out of the shower. It just wasn't like him. He would usually call me on his way to work. I went to, I called him several times.
Mhm.
Probably maybe 3 or 4 times I called. And on the last time I left a message, I told him, I don't remember exactly what I said now. But I can't get a hold of you. Give me a call at work, something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So I took my son to the school. I spoke with the receptionist, who was a friend of my other son's, it was a mother of one of my other son's hockey team members.
Mhm.
So I knew her, she knew me. Then I spoke with the counselor. We talked about my son and what he needed to do to, you know, get things in order. And he was just going crazy, this kid, he was just a 12-year-old. So,
Yeah.
um, so he got back into school and I got in my car and I went home. And then I don't remember if I went home or not. I think I did stop at home and the kids were just getting ready to leave for school. Now,
Mhm.
my older son was just getting ready to leave for school. So
Yeah.
I tried to call Pete one more time.
Mhm.
Still no answer. That I left the message. Then I went on to work.
Mhm.
Um, I got to work and it wasn't very long, probably I want to say around 11 o'clock, I got a call from Pete's mother.
Oh, wow.
Called me and said she was frantic and very excited and said that the police had called her sister and said that Pete was dead and that could I call the police department and find out what's going on. So I said, yes, I'll call. So I called.
Yeah.
I went in another room. I was a receptionist at the dental office. I went in another room in the back.
And what were you
And
thinking? Were you like, this can't be true? Were you thinking like,
I was just completely freaked out. I thought, oh my God. She didn't say anything about she did. I think she said there was a fire, but I'm not
Mhm.
really certain. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But she said they said he was dead. So I called the police department and I said, my boyfriend's mother called me and said that you called her sister and said that my boyfriend is dead. Could
Mhm.
you please give me some information?
Yeah.
So put me on hold. And the next thing I know, this guy comes back to the phone and he says, well, yes, your boyfriend is dead, but we don't know if it's self-inflicted or not. Those were his,
Mm.
those were his exact words. We don't know if it's self-inflicted. So I said, was he shot? And he said, oh, well, I can't give you any information right now. So I was just beside myself.
Yeah.
Um, So the doctors said, go ahead and go to the police department. So they wanted to see me. So I went to the police department. My friend from work drove me there.
Mhm.
One of the hygienists drove me to the police department. Um, and then I stayed at the police department talking to them um, the rest of that day, hours and hours. Um, I called my sister. Oh, one of my friends from work called my sister and told her what happened.
Mhm.
She met me at the police department. So I saw her talking to some of her friends. Her husband was a police officer and
Mhm.
had a baseball team. He managed a baseball team. And some of the police officers from my city played on his team. So my
Mm.
sister was friends with them.
Yeah.
And I stood there talking. Um, I could see her. They said I could go home. I had given them all the information that I knew. All that I knew was that there was a fire
Mhm.
and that he had been burned. I didn't know anything else. My sister and I left and we decided to go and talk to Pete's mom. So my sister and I drove to Pete's mother's house. And on the way, she said, well, he was stabbed, right? And I said, no.
Mhm.
um, One of her friends on the police department that knows her husband
Mhm.
told my sister that Pete was stabbed.
Wow.
The police never told me Pete was stabbed.
Mhm.
So this begins a snowball rolling down the hill where the police think I know something that I shouldn't know. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they think, they right away, they think I'm the person that did it, but they didn't tell me that. I didn't know.
Yeah. You're just trying to be helpful.
I had no idea, all I knew. So when we got to Pete's mother's house, I of course told them, what I knew about, what the police had told me. Then I went to our friends that we had gone out to dinner with the other night, and to the concert with, and I told them that he had been stabbed. So basically I told people what I was not even supposed to know. Okay. Right. So little did I know I was their only suspect. Once that happened, they didn't look anywhere else. So the next 3 days I spent every single day with the police, all day, all night, talking to them, thinking, as they would call me up and say, could you come back? We need to clarify some things. I'm thinking that I'm helping them.
Right. You're trying to be helpful.
Meanwhile, I'm their suspect.
Wow.
I'm their only suspect.
And I never mentioned anything.
I don't know it. I've never been in a police station like this before.
Right.
I didn't know. I had no idea that I could ask for a lawyer. I had no idea. So if anyone gets anything out of this, that what we're doing here, don't ever talk to the police without an attorney, no matter what.
Which is hard because you want to be helpful, and then you don't think.
And, by the third day, they took me in a little room and he accused me.
Wow. At
that point. And I just about fell out. I think I wanted to throw up.
Yeah.
And he blocked the door so I couldn't get out. I was intimidated. I thought, oh my God, they think I did it. I couldn't believe that they thought I did it. I couldn't believe that. Who would think that I could hurt anyone?
Right.
It was beyond me. I was just a single mom. I was,
But plus you have to process that Pete has passed away and you were at the home just that night. So if you had stayed any longer.
The police, I was the last person that saw him alive. Well, obviously I wasn't, because someone else came in there.
Right. But which is so terrifying too, because if you were there any longer, what could have happened?
And too. So I'm dealing with all of that. There was that fear,
right. Like,
am I safe?
Yeah.
So later on, it came out that a newspaper man was on his porch. No, I'm sorry. A newspaper man was going to deliver a paper at 5:00 in the morning, the Detroit Free Press. And there was a policeman standing on his porch and said, we don't need a paper. There's been a fire here. So this was before the fire department had ever been called. So really
early in the morning. So right.
Really early in the morning.
Because paper guys, would come around like 5, right? Before it was like.
Yeah. Yes. So, the only other thing that they could say was that a neighbor had seen his garage door go up about 2 feet, and it stayed that way. And then they woke up in the night hearing buzzing noise, which was Pete's fire alarm. The neighbors saw smoke coming out of his house at 8:00 in the morning and called fire department. They broke in and found Pete dead. And he had been stabbed, which they didn't tell me. All they told me was there was a fire. So,
wow.
So this led to just a lot of confusion. I still thought I wanted to help the police. But at that point, when they accused me, I said I wanted a lawyer because I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. And I thought they were going to arrest me, but they didn't really have any evidence against me. So they couldn't hold me there. So they let me leave. And as I walked out of the police area down the hallway, my other sister was waiting for me. And I fainted. I fell out because it was at this point so much stress. It was so,
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe what had happened. I just couldn't believe the past 3 days. So
Yeah.
we get to her car and I said, they think I did it. They think I did it. And at that point, I didn't know any lawyers other than my divorce lawyer. So I called him.
Yeah.
So he told me, don't say anything. Don't talk to him anymore. Don't go over there anymore. Don't say anything else to them because they're building a case around everything I say. So everything that you say to them, they can use against you because they never gave me any rights. They never said anything about a lawyer. So as long as I was there voluntarily, they could use whatever they had, whatever I had, they could take it and twist it and mold it into what they wanted to hear, because they weren't looking for anyone else. They had stopped looking at anybody. So I felt like they needed to know about my stalker. I felt that they needed to know that because, the whole thing with, I just didn't feel safe around him. So it was, to me, he would have been the likely person to have done something like this. So I called the policeman up and I met with him again outside of the police department in a parking lot and told him all this about the stalker.
And is this, sorry to interrupt, is this Detective Zielinski that
Yes.
Is this the one that had it out for you the entire?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Officer Zielinski.
Yeah. If that is his real name.
But that's close enough. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay.
After that, I stopped talking to the police, but my life didn't settle down. They didn't have anything to arrest me with. So for the next 6 months, the police followed me. They spoke to my children when I wasn't there. They spoke to all of my neighbors.
Wow.
They came to my job. They talked to the people I worked with. They talked to everyone I knew. Okay. Trying to build a case against me. And they had nothing. There was no evidence against me. Finally, after about 6 months, they came up with this woman who, I believe it was the victim's family. Pete's family had come up with this lady that lived in his neighborhood that was willing to talk with the police because she knew something, right? So he goes to see her, not once to get her information, but 6 times.
Wow.
He's got pictures of people that look like me with hairstyles like mine. And he's kind of showing her these things. Is this what her hair looks like? So finally, it was, I can't remember the date, June something. I want to say the end of June 29th comes to mind. I got ready for work. I was driving to work and they pulled me over and they arrested me.
Wow.
For Pete's murder. Weeks before that, they had gotten a search warrant for my DNA because they found blood in the garage and thought it had dripped on from my car. From the, they thought I had Pete's blood on me and it dripped in the car, and they wanted to compare my blood with the blood because a lot of times when people are stabbed, the assailant gets cut also from the knife.
Scratches or cuts.
Right. So they got a warrant and they came to my house and they took me to this lab. They searched my whole house. They took everything that I told them I was wearing, every pair of tennis shoes I had, every sweater that they took, a lot of clothing, my shoes, pants, stuff that I said that I was wearing. They got those things and they took them to examine them. they took me from my DNA evidence. So they got me to the lab, and I was wearing this coat. And he said, well, it wasn't really part of the subpoena, the search warrant, but do you think we could get your coat? I said, sure, take my coat. It's like freezing cold, but you
right. Yeah, you need it. Yeah, you take that.
And I'm thinking, okay, they have something to compare my blood to. I felt good. I thought, oh, this is finally going to be over. They're going to see it's not my blood that matches, because they have some blood other than Pete's blood that they can compare it to from the garage. Days go by, finally, nothing.
Oh, wow.
They don't call me, nothing. They didn't have any blood to compare it to. What they were trying to do is get me to confess to something that I didn't do. And by me thinking, oh, they have my blood and it matches. If I had really done it, then it would have freaked me out and I might have confessed.
Wow. Sneaky.
So they used all of these ploys to try to get me to confess to something I didn't do. So finally, one day I'm at work and I'm getting out of work. It's the end of the day. And I come out, everybody's gone but me. And I come out of the back door of my job, and there is my stalker blocking me in. And he's trying to talk to me about, whatever I didn't even listen to him. It freaked me out so bad. I ran to my car. I jumped in my car, and I drove over the lawn to get out onto the road. And I mean, this is manicured lawns, right, that I was driving over. Meanwhile, I find out later on that the police had me under surveillance and didn't do anything to even help me.
Really?
That they were sitting there watching this whole thing happen. Never did anything.
Wow.
That they watched this guy come up and back me into a space, and I couldn't move. I couldn't get out. I drove like a maniac down the street. The police were following. I was followed by the police more than it was like every time I turn around, I'd see the police behind me. So it was like more of a psychological thing that they were trying to do to me to get me to break. This was 6 months of this.
Wow.
So my stress level was just through the roof. I was just a mess. I was a total mess.
And they never interviewed like the stalker, like when you told them about the stalker, did they really do anything? They were like, oh, that's pretty weird.
They'll come up a little later.
Okay.
In the story. Okay. I don't know that they haven't said anything. What they did was at this point about I kind of went out of order. Then after this happened, then I was arrested, that they had this woman that could identify me. And what she said was she saw me in the neighborhood at 5 o'clock in the morning, in the rain, in the dark, in a car going in the opposite direction at a high rate of speed. And that's what they had to arrest me. So they arrested me with that. That was their evidence.
Wow.
The only other thing they had was, they said, a fingernail from my garbage. Which they said that there was a scratch underneath the stab wound, and that was made by my fingernail.
Wow.
So now
the policing at its finest.
It's pretty bad. They got my garbage right the next day, but the garbage man had already come. They didn't get the garbage. They got the next week's garbage. There was nothing in the garbage. I did my own nails, so there was a lot of nail clippings and stuff in there. And what they had was a nail with a defect in it, but it wasn't. I hadn't used it. It wasn't my nail. It was never on me. But they used that as evidence against me, saying that they had a fingernail that had caused this scratch. Wow. It never happened. They didn't have the nail. That there was no blood on. There was nothing that would connect me to this nail or connect that nail to Pete. Okay. Wow. So it was it was just another little thing that they had, that they thought that they used against me to make it look like I had done something. Right.
They're just like fishing for anything to.
They would have taken anything that they could get, because they weren't looking for anyone else. Believe me.
Yeah.
Which that part alone was the most stressful part about it. So,
and why you, do you think just because you were the girlfriend?
The girlfriend.
Yeah. Yes. That's just the only reason. Like,
well, no, the other reason is because my sister told me that he was stabbed, and I was supposed to know that.
Right.
So, and the policeman that told her never came forward, not through the whole thing. I was in prison. He still never came forward and said that he had told. He had forward, never said anything. Never said a word. So they believe that. I didn't even know that that was a thing. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to know. I thought it was common knowledge that everybody knew. If my sister knew,
everyone's talking.
If my sister knew, then everybody knows. I didn't know. I wasn't supposed to know. So I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
That wasn't a problem.
Right.
So,
man.
Yeah. So it was just confusion. So there I am. I'm arrested. I'm in the jail in the city that I lived in, and I called my mom and dad. I get a picture taken of me. So I'm thinking we're not going to get all done today.
Okay. Yeah. That could be a good stopping point. You feel like that's a good stopping point, or is there?
I got arrested.
Yeah, we could do like a part 1 and like a part 2, and even like a part 3 or something.
And a part 10 and
a part 10.
Long story.
Yeah, because I was reading through the book, and yeah, it's just like so wild, just all of the different I think how she worded it, it was a whole holes in procedural holes.
She called it the perfect storm.
Yeah.
If anything could go wrong, it did go wrong.
Right.
And it was just building and building and building.
Yeah. And you could tell she was just like so infuriated and upset, because it's just like, it's just such.
She was livid. I mean, especially when it came to my trial and what they did. And I mean, it's, there's a lot going on during all that, but
yeah. Thank you so much, Kylleen. I appreciate it. I know it's a long story, but I appreciate your time with everything.
I was just wondering if I could remember things, and I guess it's all there.
Right. No, yeah, it's all there. I know it's just so many details. Sorry to make you.
It is. It's so many details. It's hard to get it all straight.
Right.
So there's stuff that Andrea didn't know, that she didn't put in her book. And I started to write a book, but I got to this part, I got right up to this part, and I couldn't go any further. It was just too difficult for me to go through the court hearings and how horrible that was. It was so horrible. So,
right. And I only went to one because I was young when it was all happened. I mean, it had already happened by the time I was born, I think, but then I remember.
You were there, but you were in your mom's belly.
Right. I was there in my mom's belly. And then I made it to one court hearing. It was the later one, which she does reference it in the book. And I remember being there.
That was the best hearing ever.
Yeah. It was like the one where the guy was like yelling and freaking out and stuff. Right. And
he got crazy. That guy got crazy.
Right. Yeah. That was wild. I remember.
Yeah, it was. So.
Okay. Thank you, Kylleen. Have a great weekend. We'll be in touch. All right. Love you too. Bye.